Susan LaFlesche was more than just a woman with a dream. She was a pioneer whose relentless determination defied every expectation, every barrier, every prejudice the world threw her way. In the 1880s, when the United States was still grappling with the bitter aftermath of the Civil War and the uneasy tensions between Native Americans and settlers, Susan dared to dream. But her dream wasn't an ordinary one. It was a dream born out of a moment of profound injustice, a moment that would shape her entire life. It all began when she was just 8 years old. Young Susan sat at the bedside of an elderly woman within her Omaha tribe, her heart heavy with concern. The woman's breaths were shallow, her face etched with pain. A doctor had been called for her, not once, not twice, but 4 times. Each time, he had promised to come. Each time, he had failed. As the hours dragged on and the night deepened, it became heartbreakingly clear. The doctor was not coming. He had made a choice, a cruel, callous decision rooted in the deep-seated prejudice of the time. He would not waste his time on a Native American woman. As the dawn broke, so too did the woman's life. She passed away in agony, her pain unanswered, her suffering ignored. It was a moment of devastating clarity for young Susan. Even at that tender age, she could sense the injustice. The doctor's absence was not a mistake. It was a deliberate act of indifference. It was a clear message. In the eyes of the world, her people were not worth saving. This searing experience ignited something deep within Susan, a burning desire to fight back against the injustice she had witnessed. Her dream took root that night, and it was one that would grow stronger with each passing year. She vowed that she would become the doctor her people needed, the healer who would never turn her back on those who needed her most. But Susan's journey was far from easy. In an era where women, particularly Native American women, were often denied the opportunity to pursue education, let alone a career in medicine, Susan's ambition seemed almost impossible. The obstacles before her were immense: poverty, racism, sexism, and the weight of societal expectations. Yet, Susan was undeterred. She knew that her path would not be easy, but she also knew that she could not allow the suffering of her people to continue unchallenged. At a time when most young women were expected to marry and conform to traditional gender roles, Susan was determined to follow a different path. She enrolled at Hampton Institute in Virginia, an institution that was one of the few willing to educate Native Americans. There, Susan stood out not just for her intelligence, but for her sheer determination. Every day was a battle against the stereotypes and biases that sought to keep her down, but Susan fought with everything she had. After her time at Hampton, Susan set her sights even higher. She applied to the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, one of the few medical schools that accepted women. It was an audacious move. Few expected a Native American woman to even dream of becoming a doctor, let alone succeed. But Susan was no ordinary woman. She was a force of nature, driven by a purpose larger than herself. She was not just fighting for her own future, she was fighting for the future of her entire people. Medical school was grueling. The workload was intense, the hours long, and the pressure immense. Many doubted that Susan would make it through. After all, the world had rarely seen a Native American woman in such a position, and there were those who believed she would fail. But Susan proved them wrong time and time again. Every challenge she faced only strengthened her resolve. She pushed herself to the limit, knowing that each step forward brought her closer to fulfilling the promise she had made to herself on that fateful night so many years ago. In 1889, Susan LaFlesche became the first Native American woman to earn a medical degree in the United States. It was a groundbreaking achievement, one that shattered not just one barrier, but many. For Susan, however, this was just the beginning. Her journey had never been about personal success. It had always been about healing her people. Returning to her Omaha tribe, Dr. Susan LaFlesche set to work immediately. She was not content to simply treat the physical ailments of her patients. She also sought to heal the wounds inflicted by years of systemic oppression and neglect. She traveled from village to village, often on horseback, treating everything from tuberculosis to influenza. She worked tirelessly, often seeing up to 20 patients in a single day. But more than just treating illness, she brought hope to a people who had long been abandoned by the very system meant to protect them. Susan's work was not without its challenges. As the only doctor for miles, the demands on her time and energy were immense. There were days when the weight of her responsibilities seemed almost too much to bear. But Susan was unwavering in her commitment. She had seen firsthand what happened when doctors neglected their duties, and she refused to let her people suffer the same fate. In addition to her medical work, Susan became a passionate advocate for public health and sanitation, understanding that true healing went beyond treating individual cases. She fought for clean drinking water, proper waste disposal, and better living conditions for her people. She educated her community on the importance of hygiene and preventive care, knowing that these changes could save countless lives. Susan LaFlesche's legacy is not just one of medical achievement. It is one of resilience, determination, and a fierce commitment to justice. She shattered expectations, broke down barriers, and in doing so, paved the way for future generations of Native American women to follow in her footsteps. Her story is a testament to the power of one person's determination to make a difference, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As we remember Dr. Susan LaFlesche, we are reminded of the strength it takes to challenge a world that tells you that you do not belong, to rise above the prejudices and injustices that seek to hold you back. Susan did more than just become a doctor. She became a symbol of hope, a beacon of change, and an inspiration for all those who dared to dream beyond the limits of their circumstances. In a world where the odds were stacked against her, Susan LaFlesche chose not to be defined by the limitations placed upon her. She chose to rewrite the narrative, not just for herself, but for her entire community. And in doing so, she became a hero, not just for the Omaha people, but for all of us who believe in the power of perseverance, the importance of justice, and the unbreakable SP, for even then I saw the need of my people for a good physician. These were the words that echoed in Susan LaFlesche's mind from a young age. Born on June 17, 1865, in a modest buckskin teepee on the Omaha Indian Reservation. In northeast Nebraska, Susan's life was anything but ordinary. From the very beginning, her path was destined to be different. Her mixed-race heritage set her apart, and though she was never given a traditional Omaha name by her parents, she carried within her the weight of both her Native American roots and the expectations of a world that was rapidly changing. Susan's father, Chief Joseph LaFlesche, also known as Iron Eye, was a man of profound foresight. He understood that the old ways were being swept away by the tide of white settlers, and he believed that survival for his people would require adaptation, not resistance. As the chief of the Omaha tribe, Joseph LaFlesche was deeply invested in the welfare of his people. He saw the looming danger that awaited them if they did not embrace the new world that was encroaching upon their land. It was a world of white men with white laws, white schools, and a white way of living. And it was a world that, to his great dismay, left little room for the customs and traditions of the Omaha people. Chief LaFlesche's vision for the future of his tribe was clear. They had to adapt to survive. The old ways, though rich in history and culture, could no longer sustain them in this new reality. He understood that education and integration into the white man's world were no longer options. They were necessities. This realization fueled his determination to ensure that his children, particularly his daughters, were prepared to navigate this new landscape. The pressure was immense. Chief LaFlesche did not raise his daughters to merely observe the world around them. He raised them to conquer it. His approach was almost ruthless in its intensity. From a young age, Susan and her sisters were immersed in the English language. They were taught to read and write in English, not Omaha. They attended white schools, where they were often the only Native children in attendance. The chief's belief was simple. If his daughters could excel in the white man's world, they could become the bridge between two cultures, ensuring the survival and prosperity of the Omaha people. For Susan, this indoctrination was both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, it provided her with opportunities that few Omaha women before her had ever been granted. She was given an education, a tool that her father believed was essential for the survival of their people. But on the other hand, it distanced her from the traditional Omaha ways, creating an internal struggle that would follow her throughout her life. She was a child of two worlds, but she belonged fully to neither. She could speak the language of the white man, but she felt the pull of her native heritage in every fiber of her being. As she grew older, this internal conflict began to take shape in the form of a deep, abiding desire to heal. Susan saw the suffering of her people, both physical and spiritual, and she knew that the key to their survival lay in understanding both worlds. She could not turn her back on her Omaha roots, nor could she ignore the realities of the white world that surrounded them. Instead, she chose to blend the two, using the tools of the white man's medicine to heal the wounds of her own people. Chief LaFlesche's influence on Susan was undeniable. His relentless push for education and adaptation shaped her into a woman of fierce determination and unshakable resolve. But it was Susan's own compassion, her deep empathy for her people that would ultimately define her legacy. She saw beyond the immediate challenges of her time and envisioned a future where the Omaha people could thrive, not by abandoning their heritage, but by blending it with the knowledge and advancements of the white world. This vision was revolutionary for the time. In the 19th century, the United States was a country fraught with racial tension and prejudice. Native Americans were often viewed as obstacles to progress, and their culture was seen as inferior to that of the white settlers. Yet Susan LaFlesche dared to defy these perceptions. She embraced her education with the understanding that it was not a betrayal of her heritage, but a means to protect and uplift her people. She would become a physician not just for the sake of fulfilling her father's vision, but for the deeper purpose of ensuring that her people could continue to exist in this rapidly changing world. Susan's journey to becoming a doctor was not without its challenges. As a Native American woman in the 1880s, the path before her was strewn with obstacles that would have deterred even the most determined individuals. She faced discrimination at every turn from those who believed that women had no place in medicine, to those who viewed Native Americans as unworthy of education and professional achievement. But Susan was undeterred. She had seen too much suffering to allow prejudice to stand in her way. Her father had prepared her for this. He had instilled in her a resilience that would carry her through the darkest moments of her life. She knew that her success was not just about her own dreams. It was about fulfilling a promise to her people, a promise that they would not be left behind in this new world. She had seen the need for a good physician, and she was determined to be the one to answer that call. In 1889, Susan LaFlesche graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, becoming the first Native American woman in the United States to earn a medical degree. It was a momentous achievement, one that fulfilled both her father's vision and her own deep desire to heal her people. But for Susan, it was just the beginning. She returned to the Omaha Reservation not as a conqueror of the white world, but as a healer who carried the knowledge of both worlds within her.